So, welcome to the deep dive. Usually when we talk about reaching a goal in life, there's this expectation of a very clear, definitive finish line.
Right.
Like, think about running a marathon. You put in the grueling miles, you finally cross that tape, someone hands you a shiny medal, and you can point to it and say, I did it. I arrived. I am finished.
Exactly. It's a very tangible accomplishment. You reach this solid destination, and then you get to just, well, rest.
Yeah, but when you apply that finish line mentality to human psychology specifically, when we start trying to unpack and really explain this theme of self-love, human psychology actively punishes us
Absolutely.
because we treat our internal value the exact same way we treat a marathon or, I don't know, a quarterly earnings report. And it creates a reality that is completely backwards from how our minds actually function.
Well, I mean, we live in a highly commodified culture where literally everything is broken down into actionable steps and acquisitions, right?
Right.
We are conditioned to believe that if we just um, acquire the right habits, the right mindset, or even just the right level of success, we will finally cross this threshold into being inherently valuable.
It's like we treat it like a VIP club with a velvet rope.
Yeah.
You think you could only enter this club once you've fixed all your flaws? Like, you have to lose the weight, get the promotion, finally stop being awkward in social situations, and then the bouncer unclips the rope and is like, welcome, you are finally worthy of your own respect.
Which is just so exhausting.
It is. But the text we are analyzing today, which is honestly just a few sentences long, it argues that our entire definition of self-worth is fundamentally broken. Our mission today is to really explain this theme, starting with the fact that many people believe self-love means believing you're perfect, and the text explicitly says that it doesn't.
Right, because to understand what self-love actually is, we really have to look at the psychological friction between our desire for perfection and, well, our reality.
Yeah.
Because perfection is a static state. It
Yeah.
implies a complete lack of movement.
Like a finished product.
Exactly, a finished product. But human beings are dynamic. I mean, we are biologically and psychologically designed to be in a constant state of flux.
So the text actually defines it this way. It says, self-love means recognizing that you are worthy of love, respect, and compassion, even while you're still growing.
That's such a crucial distinction.
It really is. And when I read that, the first image that came to mind was a house under construction.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like you walk onto a job site and there is scaffolding everywhere. The ground is just pure mud. There are exposed wires hanging out of the ceiling. And, there isn't even a roof yet. It is objectively messy and unfinished.
And yet, if you were the architect, you wouldn't walk onto that site, look at the wooden frame, and just declare the unfinished house completely worthless just because it's not done.
Right. You wouldn't.
You wouldn't demand they tear down the entire foundation just because the drywall isn't up yet.
Exactly. You see the value in the foundation. But okay, let's unpack this a bit because I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Granting ourselves that same grace feels incredibly risky. Like, if I'm looking at my own internal mess, my bad habits, my insecurities, my exposed wires, and I constantly tell myself that I'm worthy of love and respect exactly as I am, aren't I just settling?
That's a very common fear, actually.
Right. Because how do I actually find the motivation to finish building the house if I'm already completely satisfied with a mud pit?
Well, so that assumes that love and respect are rewards that are distributed only for completed work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and what the text is suggesting, and honestly what developmental psychology fully supports, is that love, respect, and compassion are actually the tools required to do the building in the first place.
The tools, not the reward.
Exactly. Think about the triad of words used there. Love is the baseline care for your existence. Respect is honoring your boundaries and your needs. And compassion is the grace you extend when you inevitably make a mistake.
Because we all do.
Right. And if you withhold those tools until the house is finished, well, the house never gets built. I mean, you cannot build a sturdy structure if you are constantly taking a sledgehammer to the foundation out of frustration that it isn't a roof yet.
Wow, yeah. So the distinction is separating our inherent worth from our current stage of progress. Like, the word while is doing all the heavy lifting in that quote, even while you're still growing.
It forces a coexistence. You don't have to pause your self-respect until you finish your personal growth checklist.
Right.
The mess of the construction site isn't a sign of your failure. It's just a necessary byproduct of your ongoing creation.
I see the logic, I really do. But the immediate problem that comes to mind is, well, the building inspectors.
Ah, yes, other people.
Exactly. Because even if I manage to sit in my muddy construction site and respect my own process, there are other people walking by that site constantly, pointing out the exposed wires and basically telling me I'm doing a terrible job.
Right.
Which brings us to the next assertion in this text, which says, it means understanding that your value doesn't increase because someone praises you, and it doesn't decrease because someone criticizes you.
The external environment is historically the biggest threat to internal stability. And, I mean, this goes incredibly deep into our evolutionary biology.
Well, let's dig into that biology, because ignoring criticism is one thing. We all logically know we shouldn't let negative people drag us down.
Sure.
But the text says our value doesn't increase when someone praises us either. And honestly, ignoring praise sounds kind of miserable. Like, we are wired to want people to like us, aren't we?
We are absolutely wired for it. For hundreds of thousands of years, our survival depended entirely on tribal validation.
Right, because you needed the group.
Exactly. If the tribe liked you, they shared their food, they protected you from predators, and you survived. But if the tribe criticized you or rejected you, you were cast out and you literally died. So our brains developed this highly sensitive radar for social feedback. A compliment literally triggers a dopamine release in the brain, which signals to us, you are safe, you belong.
And criticism.
Criticism triggers a cortisol response.
Yep.
It actually mimics physical pain in the brain, signaling you are in danger.
So we are literally fighting our own survival instincts when we try to detach from other people's opinions.
100%.
It's like we treat our self-worth like a volatile stock market ticker. Someone gives you a compliment on your work and bing, the bell rings, the green arrow goes up, and your stock price surges.
Yeah.
But then an hour later, someone cuts you off in traffic or you get a passive-aggressive email and the market crashes. Red arrows everywhere. You just feel bankrupt.
The mental stock market is a perfect way to visualize the exhaustion of this dynamic. But look at the fundamental law of psychological mechanics the text is exposing here. It's really a matter of leverage.
Leverage. How so?
Well, if you outsource your baseline value to the positive opinions of others, if you allow their praise to actively increase your worth, you automatically give them the leverage to destroy your worth with their negative opinions.
Oh, wow. You literally hand them the keys to your psychological bank account.
You cannot have one without the other. If praise has the power to inject value into you, then criticism inherently possesses the power to extract value from you.
That is terrifying.
It is. But the text offers a radical solution to this, which is to take your self-worth off the public exchange entirely. Stop being a publicly traded company where your value fluctuates based on the daily mood or rumors and the whims of the crowd.
You take the company private.
You take the company private.
Okay, taking the company private conceptually makes a ton of sense, but let's ground this in reality for a second. Tomorrow morning, I have to go to work. I have a boss. I literally have a yearly performance review where my salary and my livelihood are dictated by someone else's criticism and praise of my output.
Right, the real-world application.
Exactly. How can I possibly operate as a private entity in a world that demands I be publicly evaluated?
That is exactly where we have to establish a really rigid boundary between our behavioral output and our inherent human value.
Okay, tell me more about that boundary.
At a performance review, your boss is evaluating a spreadsheet or a project or a set of professional behaviors. They're critiquing a product you produced.
Right.
The trap is that we collapse our identity into our output. We think, my spreadsheet had an error, therefore I am a failure of a human being.
I do that all the time.
We all do. But taking the company private means you can absolutely listen to the behavioral feedback. You can fix the spreadsheet, you can improve the product without letting that feedback dictate the core valuation of the person who made it.
So I can accept the reality of the critique without absorbing the emotional bankruptcy it usually causes. Like, my core assets remain untouched regardless of the market's reaction to my latest product.
Precisely. And think about the freedom in that. When your human value is tied to external validation, you spend your entire life performing. You heavily curate your personality, your appearance, your choices, all just to maximize praise and minimize criticism.
Which is exhausting.
It is a state of constant low-grade anxiety because you are trying to control an uncontrollable variable, which is other people's perceptions.
Which brings us to the core mystery of this entire framework. If our value doesn't come from achieving that static, flawless perfection, and it doesn't come from the praise or criticism of the crowd, where does the currency actually originate?
Right, the big question.
And the text answers this with a very definitive claim. It says, your worth has never depended on the opinions of others. It has always existed.
Has always existed. I mean, that reframes the entire timeline of a human life.
It really does. It makes me think about buying a brand new computer.
Oh.
You take this laptop out of the box, and it has a pristine foundational operating system. It functions perfectly. But over the next 10 or 20 years, you start downloading things. You pick up malware, buggy software, endless pop-up ads.
And in human terms, that's trauma, toxic relationships, bad bosses, societal conditioning.
Exactly. And eventually the computer is running so slowly and it's glitching so terribly that you look at the screen and think, this machine is completely broken. It's just garbage.
But the foundational code, the original operating system, was never actually corrupted.
Yes. The base code is completely untouched. It is just buried under 2 decades of bloatware. The elemental value of the machine didn't disappear just because the environment it was exposed to flooded it with viruses.
That is a fantastic analogy. And taking that further, if we look at the historical phrasing in the text has always existed, it offers a profound psychological reassurance.
Because it means it's still there.
Right. When you believe you are the broken machine, your goal becomes desperately trying to acquire worth. You think you need to go out into the world and find new software to install to finally make yourself valuable. But this text shifts the goal from acquisition to recognition.
So you don't have to write a new operating system. You literally just have to uninstall the malware.
Which completely rewrites a person's personal history. Think about what this means for someone who has spent years in, say, deeply abusive environments, genuinely believing they were worthless.
Wow, yeah.
The text asserts that even on their darkest day, even the moment they felt the most rejected or ashamed, their core baseline of worth was entirely intact. It never left. It never depended on the people treating them poorly.
But let's pause here because I feel like this is where the rubber meets the road and frankly where things get really difficult.
Oh, for sure.
Because it is very easy for us to sit here in a studio, map out computer analogies, and logically agree that human worth is an inherent, unchangeable baseline. But logically, knowing something and emotionally feeling it in your chest on a random Tuesday morning are 2 completely different universes.
The gap between intellectual understanding and emotional reality is basically where the entirety of the human struggle takes place.
And the text doesn't shy away from that gap at all. It concludes with this line, "The challenge is learning to believe it."
Yeah.
I really want to zero in on those 2 words, challenge and learning. Because let's say I've listened to this, I feel empowered, I'm like, yes, my operating system is intact.
Okay.
Then I go to work, I accidentally reply all to a massive company email with something embarrassing, and instantly that deeply ingrained inner critic wakes up and screams, you are an idiot, you are a disaster, you have 0 value.
We've all been there.
How does knowing my worth always existed actually help me in that agonizing moment?
Well, this is where we have to look at neuroplasticity, which is the physical wiring of your brain.
Yeah.
Every time you have engaged in self-criticism over your lifetime, you have essentially driven a mental truck down a dirt road. And over years, that truck carves deep, entrenched ruts into the road.
Like physical pathways.
Exactly. So when you make a mistake, like hitting reply all, your brain naturally takes the path of least resistance. It steers straight into those deep ruts of shame and self-loathing, because biologically, that is the most efficient practiced route.
So my brain is literally physically optimized to attack my self-worth.
Exactly. So when the text calls this a challenge and a process of learning, it is validating the biological difficulty of what you are trying to do.
Oh, wow.
Learning to believe in your inherent worth means actively forcing the mental truck out of those deep ruts and driving over unbroken, difficult terrain to forge a new pathway.
And that takes immense energy.
It takes so much energy. It feels unnatural. It's a physiological process, not just a philosophical epiphany you have once and then never struggle with again.
You know, that reframing is incredibly relieving.
What's that?
Because usually when we fail to be kind to ourselves, we add this secondary layer of shame. Like we think, I'm so stupid for still feeling insecure. I should be better at self-love by now.
Right. Shame about the shame.
Exactly. But the text acts as a permission slip to struggle. It doesn't frame self-love as a default setting you've somehow failed to turn on. It frames it as an ongoing, highly demanding curriculum.
It creates an unbreakable safety net. When you make that mistake at work and the inner critic starts screaming, you haven't failed at self-love. You haven't lost your inherent worth.
You're just in the ruts.
You are simply in the middle of the challenge. You are in the classroom, currently learning to believe it. And that brings us full circle right back to the beginning of the source material.
You are worthy of compassion while you are still growing,
Right.
while you are still learning to steer out of those neural ruts.
The framework supports itself perfectly. You are allowed to be bad at self-love sometimes because your worth exists entirely independent of your ability to flawlessly execute self-love on any given day.
That is just a staggering amount of psychological recalibration packed into just a handful of sentences.
It really is.
Let's trace the arc of what we've covered here because it really does dismantle the way we normally operate. We started by tearing down the myth that perfection is the prerequisite for self-respect.
Right.
We realized that love and compassion are the actual tools needed on the messy construction site of our ongoing growth, not the reward for finishing.
And then we looked at the evolutionary trap of the mental stock market. We explored the absolute necessity of taking our self-worth private, recognizing that if we rely on external praise to inflate our value, we inevitably grant external criticism the power to bankrupt us.
Which led us to replacing that volatile market with the reality of the pre-installed operating system. The understanding that our core elemental value has inherently existed since day one, totally uncorrupted by the malware of our environments or the opinions of the crowd. And finally, we grounded all of this in the reality of neuroplasticity, accepting that believing this truth is a lifelong challenge of rewiring our brains, and that we have full permission to struggle along the way.
It is a profound shift, really, from trying to build a self to simply uncovering the one that has always been there.
So, to you, listening to this right now, the next time you find yourself at the mercy of a harsh critique, or honestly, even the next time you receive glowing praise and feel that dangerous urge to tie your entire identity to that compliment,
Which is so tempting to do.
it is. I want you to visualize that computer operating system. Picture that original, untouched baseline code sitting there in your mind, completely unbothered and unchanged by whatever buggy software someone is trying to install on it. Your value remains totally intact.
And as you carry that visualization forward, I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own.
The text asserts unequivocally that your worth has always existed. If we treat that as an absolute truth, if your foundational value has truly been there the entire time, entirely unchanged by every failure, every embarrassing moment, or every glowing success you've ever experienced, what else about your own identity might you be completely misjudging right now, simply out of habit?